The conversation is a really complex, thick, clever, original, multi-layered, tangential, and unpredictable story. It's good in every sense. It's just all around very strong writing and plotting. It was tangential because you never know whether the killing is going to take place. At first, there's a possibility of a killing, but it's kept very vague at first, and we first have to deduce just how scared the people are of the boss of Cole and just what he's planning. And even if there is going to be a killing, we don't know when it's going to take place. We don't know if they're following Cole. And it was also very thick. It had many twists. We see him getting stalked more and more and have troubles in his job because he gets frustrated with one of his employees because he is so secretive, and he, due to this, loses him. And they try to spy on him and follow him to a convention. And it turns out that they know his number. And at the convention, he also sees that they're trying to persuade him more and more to go along with him. He sees that the people he was spying on are also with the boss, and he realizes that the tapes are very suspicious, and he only wants to give them to the director, and he becomes more and more obsessed with deducing what's in the tapes as they acted very suspicious and possessive of them, because when he wanted to give the tapes to them, but refused to give them to no one but the director, they tried to grab them, and he realizes this is indeed about something very horrible, and he tries to deduce what's going on at the tape, and he comes to the conclusion there's going to be a murder, and he becomes more and more secretive. He plans to destroy them, and then his girlfriend steals them because she also had big job frustrations, and that's a very subtle twist. His girlfriend indicated that she had been very frustrated with her job in the past, that she'd lost her job as assistant of her manager, who she had married because he went bankrupt, so she very clearly stole it for the money. But that isn't flat out stated. She had financial problems, and later on it turns out she's given up the tapes, and she knew how important they were, so we can assume that it turned out she indeed wasn't trustworthy, she was corrupt. And so then he quickly has a meeting with them, and he then tries to spy on them, of course, as he discovers that the boss is going to do something suspicious, and he gets more and more paranoid, and he realizes something bad is going down, and now it's possible that the boss will take revenge on his wife, who is dating somebody else, and he tries to renegotiate the deal and ask what's going on, and he wants to see what his boss is planning, and he is suspicious of what exactly the tapes are about, and he tries to see whether people are in his house. And of course he has to discover where the murder is, and then he tries to speak to the boss once it's taken place, and he discovers also that one of his own friends was spying on him for a joke, and one of his fellow colleagues also keeps trying to persuade him to join a corrupt business just for money, but he has to stick to his principles. And he's also being very secretive, and he gets nightmares, and he has the feeling of being followed, and he starts to listen to tapes more and more to find out what they mean. It was really clever also. It's just a very smart, sophisticated plot, with very clever twists and detailed plotting, like the use of very sophisticated spying equipment, like spying on people from 3 different locations, and then combining the recordings, and also placing bugs within pens and using telephones as bugs themselves, and also corporate dealings with the assistant eventually helping the wife who's betraying him, and also the twist that the only one we trust turns out to be the one to betray him, and that his own friends spy on him, that within the business everybody in the event eventually tries to outdo the other to get a more successful career, and also that showing that in the business you can't trust anyone. And also at the end of the film they call him and no one answers, and then they call him again and they show that they were bugging him and tell him they're spying on him, and he searches the whole house for the bug but he can't find it. But early in the film they showed you that you could bug someone through their telephone by calling once and then saying something and then taping them, and that was what they did here. They first called and then they didn't say anything, and then called again and showed that they had recorded everything that happened since they first called. But this was only mentioned once. It wasn't explained in a lot of detail, and it was done in passing. So our main character doesn't realize it, and probably neither do we unless you pay close attention. It is really subtle and hidden, and it was original because technology making someone completely insane like this hasn't really been used in a film before. This really comments on the dangers that started in the 70s that are even more relevant today, of how technology eventually takes away all of your privacy. You can't really be safe anywhere, so anyone can know about any relationships you have, use it against you, use your weaknesses against you, take your privacy away, try to attack you at your weak points. It has got such a bleak and uncertain and an evocative look at spying, and this which has never been done fully this way before. It's so full also of endless wandering and just trying to hide and trying to understand what's going on. Cole is really a passive main character. He just wants to know what this murder is about, and he's trying to hide from the spying, but there isn't any aggression or conflict here. There isn't any fighting. And he also has to totally deal without the help from others. The whole film is about him trying to stay away from other people hurting him instead of trying to make friendships. It's very original in that sense. He's just too scared to do something. He can only understand the murder, but he cannot prevent it. At the end, he's listening to them, but he still isn't capable of preventing the murder. He just watches it, and then it almost seems as though it never happened, but it did, and he wasn't capable of doing anything. He isn't capable of dealing this problem with anyone because he's too paranoid, and the whole film is about him starting to care more and more and wanting to do something about it, but being unable to, realizing how unfit he is for the business, realizing how wrong the business is, realizing how it destroys him, but he isn't capable of doing anything about it, so he's destroyed by the wrong life he chooses based on the flaws in his personality. So it's a very tragic story in a very original way, and that makes it also very dark and ambiguous. What is also really shocking is that our main character, Cole, fears something will happen. It's the main focus of the film, that he's constantly afraid that a murder will occur, the same way that it did in the past. He fears a repetition of the past, that his being irresponsible and self-indulgent with his ability to spy on people will once again have others pay the price. And he constantly throughout the film listens to the tapes, dreading this more and more, dreading they will be stolen, and he's completely paranoid of it, and he does everything to prevent it, keeping the tapes secret and trying not to have them stolen, and trying to spy on the couple once they confront each other in the hotel. And the thing is, it just happens. He just has to watch it all alone. But unlike in most films where the horror comes from a form of surprise, or a character is capable of fighting it at some point but still fails and has people to share his pain with, here it just happens exactly as he expected, and he isn't capable of doing anything about it. The tapes are just stolen because it turns out he cannot trust anyone, he can indeed not share it with anyone, and he cannot do anything to save the couple because he's just a listener. We just follow from the beginning our main character Cole by just seeing him follow others but being too scared to do anything, and he just has to hide. He in fact plays the TV very loudly and just hides under the bed once the murder is taking place. It's almost like he's trying to deny it happened, and it almost seems though it didn't happen, but it did. Also, it is really shocking with the twist that indeed the director gets murdered, and that not only does he now once again have blood on his hands, but because he tried to do the right thing, they now try to spy on Cole, and therefore he goes totally insane because he cannot find the buck, and he breaks down his own house, and he's left with nothing. He even destroys his own materials because he realizes none of it matters. There are only two twists I thought were a little bit flawed. They were still great, but I thought that they weren't up to par with the rest of the plot, which was that one, it turns out that the people he was spying on, Mark and Anne, actually meant that they were going to kill the director. They didn't fear that they would be killed, they were planning to kill him. They said he would kill us if he had the chance, not he would kill us if he had the chance. And this of course is a smart play on the fact that when you record people, often you don't get the sound completely right, so it's interesting to see how words with a slightly different emphasis can mean totally different things, but they were very minor characters. It's mainly about Cole's struggle, so it's a mystery that wasn't explored that far. We kind of understand their motivations, and they are actually pretty clever. They wanted to cheat on the director and they want to get away with it, and obviously Anne wanted to then get control over the company. You're betraying a rich man and you try to get away with his money, so it is a very smart twist. It just doesn't mean a whole lot, because the struggle with the director and his adulterous wife is the main focus of the film. And second, that they start spying on him in the end was a little bit really of a plot hole, because the first twist I had a problem with was just that it wasn't as developed and important as it could have been. It was kind of more of a vulture, but it still was a very smart twist and did amount quite a bit still. But the real plot hole here is that they had no real reason to spy on him at the end, because they had successfully committed their murder. He hadn't told the authorities about anything. He had just delivered them the tapes and was worried about what was going to happen, but he hadn't in any way attacked any of them, or they didn't know he had any leverage on them. They didn't even know he was close to the hotel when it happened, and they don't even know in any way that he talked with anyone else about this. They in fact know that he kept the tapes to themselves and that he was just worried to give them to them because he was worried of what they would do with it, and that he was worried that the murder was going to take place. But of course he did run up to see the director at the end, so it's possible that based on that they knew the murder, but still he didn't really have any leverage on them. They didn't know he knew about the specific murder, and they also knew that he wasn't going to tell anyone because he was totally secretive, that he just wanted to make money and that he just felt guilty. So spying on him would do nothing but to involve him further, as he would be even more suspicious and would be even more angry at him. So I think that since he had no evidence towards them and they couldn't have gained anything by spying on him, as when he goes to the police outside of his house, they can still not achieve anything with it. It's more just makes for a dramatic ending where his privacy is lost, but it seems a little bit pointless to spy on him, as he didn't really do anything that deserved it. It's a little illogical, but still they had some reason, so it's not a very bad twist, because of course still he had been very worried about the tapes. It's just a little bit underdeveloped, which shows at rewatchings. There's just one problem I had with the overall suspenseness of the plot of this film. Why wasn't there like an evil clown trying to eat him, you know? You could like say very scary things like, we're all flying, you know? They could have been flying clowns, and then they could have like chased him in the air. Stephen King is the only one with a drinking problem, okay? Yeah. The characters are extremely deep and have really complex arcs and backstories. The film mainly centers on Cole and shows nearly everything from his perspective, which is original and daring, and it adds to the paranoid feeling. The other characters are less developed, except for Meredith and Stan. Those are also very great characters. Cole is silent, shy, secretive, paranoid, quickly annoyed, and can also be angry, but also friendly and polite, vulnerable, possessive, and he is a real thinker. He's quickly worried, really tries to be moral and very aware, and is self-critical yet pragmatic, conflicted but also hardworking, protective and inside very sad, scared, restless, stressed, awkward, needing for love, but closed. He loves quietness and rest, and is really blunt, frustrated, naive, obsessive, and he can also really regret mistakes. And on a side note, he's very relatable. I also loved quietness. I mean, really, it's kind of annoying to constantly have other people bother you, you know, with comments like, oh, you're sexist because you believe that women shouldn't be priests, and please stop coming to my house and trying to date my 12-year-old daughter, and please stop sending me death threats, and please stop telling me that you'll kill me unless I vote for the Republican Party, and oh, hey, could you please stop creating fireworks in the middle of June, and could you please stop playing music for the night, and could you keep your victims quiet already? The answer is no. Stop being so critical. You're just kind of a dick. Really, get over yourself. You're just way too nitpicky. I mean, really, it's like if somebody hated on American Graffiti because it would just be a musical montage, even though it's just supposed to indicate the 70s age. I don't even get the point of this reference. But the point is, he's also very persistent, caring, yet pacifistic and meek. He's also very well developed in his dream sequence, which was very insightful, because he talks of his past, but he can only discuss it in a dream. He doesn't really let anyone know. He just lets himself know in his dream. He wants to tell other people. He also lets us know more of himself for the dream sequence, as we see the events that shaped him, but also how he shapes those events. And I know that sounds incredibly pretentious and like I'm trying to be clever, but I actually have a point. Please listen. I'm trying to be clever. But the point is, as I said, it's very clever. It's at the very least a lot better than the joke department. He couldn't walk as a child, and he was put in hot baths, and at one time his mother went to the door and he nearly drowned. This clearly caused him to be sad and somber, having a near-death experience, but he never spoke of this with anyone. It shows he's inward, and as a result he's frustrated and sad, and very pessimistic, and he was sad he survived, so he clearly suffered a lot. It's very painful to not be able to walk a lot as a child, and as a result he's quiet and scared and quickly angry, so he never learned to share his problems with others, as he lacked the liveliness to be able to decisively deal with sadness. He doesn't act out at all, he's just sad inside. He very rarely gets angry, but when he does, he's just very passively aggressive, as he just goes away from Meredith. And it's also very believable, similar to how you can become angry and sadistic and frustrated when you're lonely and you don't share your problems with anyone. So what do you prefer, Digimon or Pokemon? I think that Digimon, had his characters grow more, and where was I? Oh yeah, he had a life-threatening accident. This is such a wonderful film. And of course that is incredibly traumatizing, but it happens to a lot of people when they're young. But he's still worried of it now. He's very pondering and peaceless. This also clearly indicates how this event didn't just shape him, but he's in general so pondering and peaceless in character that he allowed these events to hurt him so much, and that's why he's so problematically dealing with his situation now. And he's also hit someone when he was young, showing us he indeed had some anger in him, that he's conflicted because he doesn't know why he did it, and he's still very regretful of it, still feeling guilty because the person died a year later, and he takes negative events way harder than most, and we know so much of his personal life. He lives in a hidden apartment, has many locks, is kind of OCD, can be very cranky, and he can also be frustrated when people keep asking him questions. He loves to play the saxophone, and he's a devout Catholic who does confessions and has statues of Mary, which is nice because it makes for a very religious character who's pragmatic, creating a contrast, and it also makes him more likable, as we see he really does have a conscience and he is really dedicated to higher meaning. It makes him deeper, and Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, because he's a Catholic and he's a true believer, and therefore he's better than those filthy Protestants, and he's likable because all Catholics are good people. I'm kind of tired. I'm not going to do that now. And we see he does like one woman a bit, and he does try to have friendships with his colleagues. He also is very humorless.